Welcome to this episode of Oh, by the way. We are back in York, in our confessional here in York today, and we are welcomed by another wonderful guest.
Yeah, we are. We're thrilled to have an actual program alumni, Jamie Lissauer, here with us. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you.
Yeah, we kind of thought we needed to have Jamie do one of these shows simply because when we took a little bit of a downtime and we hadn't done Oh, by the way for a while because we were so incredibly busy, Jamie sends us an email that says, "Where's Oh, by the way? I am missing Oh, by the way. I love Oh, by the way." And so it's really because of you that we really pushed forward, got a grant, and have this incredible sponsor, a Sarah Care Hospice Foundation, to be able to keep doing the show. So it's really all about you.
It is very true. Your email came in, and Mom was like, "Casey, we need to do this. Jamie says we need to." And I said, "Mom, I just can't possibly, on top of everything I'm doing, edit and film the show. It's just getting to be so much." And that's when we started the conversation. Okay, how could we make this better? How can we do it so that we would have the likes of, a Tom Shortridge to help us with all of this? So.
Well, and we figured, Jamie, that if you were feeling this way, maybe others were feeling this way. And it was really wonderful for us to be able to have you actually tell it to us and let us know that I watch those faithfully and I might not be back in York anymore, but this is my connection to Olivia's house. And I thought, how many other alumni stay connected and keep up with us? We don't sometimes realize it as we're so busy doing the work. We don't realize that, those of you kids who have graduated and gone on to create beautifully productive lives, you still have your anchor here. And Oh, by the way, is one of those anchors. So how do you feel about that? Is that kind of what you were thinking?
No, I used to watch them from my bedroom in my apartment off campus at school, and I just came across them one day, I think, and was like, "Oh, this is cool. What are they doing? That's so cool." So I'm glad that they're continuing.
I think it was kind of a surprise to us that anyone was watching or cared besides
that was
us.
Nice. That was nice
so
to
that
learn.
was an exciting day. But,
Absolutely.
So we want to thank you for being here today on this episode. We knew we wanted to bring in, alumni and kind of gain perspective and share those perspectives with everyone. So when trying to figure out who could we bring in, who would be the good alumni to speak on Oh, by the way, it just seemed a natural fit to invite you. So we're thrilled you're here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So that being said, I know we want to break away and have some questions. I know you have some questions for Jamie, so do I.
Yeah.
So let's get right to it.
Well, welcome back into the teen room. You spent a little time here in the Hearts Can Heal program many years ago, actually. When you were in 9th grade, you were here. And again, I guess when you were in about 11th or 12th grade, you came back through the program because you had another death in your family.
Right. I went through it the first time after losing my mom. And then my dad got remarried and we lost one of my stepsisters. So we came back through the program with my stepmom. And
So you've had 2 opportunities to heal through this program.
Right.
And I know they were different. They were different in many ways, but let's talk about the first time because I remember very vividly you not really wanting to be here and learning a little later that, wow, I kind of got something out of that program.
Right.
So as a, 14-year-old, not wanting to come here, tell me what that was like kind of being made to come here.
We had sought out family counseling and, the counselor said, there's this great program, it's called Olivia's house, and, this is what they do. And my dad looked at me and was like, I think you should do it. And I looked at him and I was like, no, done, don't need it, don't want it, not interested,
I'll go.
Check please, done. And I think it was a combination of him seeing something that, wasn't right and me realizing through, school and emotions that I just couldn't do it on my own, couldn't figure it out on my own. It was too big. And so then I was like, okay, well, you were right, I was wrong, I need to do this. So we came through and went through the program, but I think it was still, I was very resistant and I think very young and very close to the loss. And so it was, it was hard to get a lot from it because it was soon. It was so soon after it had happened. But I realized looking back on it that, those are that's where I was given the tools. Like, I wasn't ready to use the tools, but they were in a box. They were safe, kept nice and safe. And, when I was ready to use them, there they were. And so that was sort of the foundation of, how I began to grieve when I was ready to grieve, which was not for very many more years down the road after having gone through the program twice.
Wow. And that's, I think, an important thing to say is that, it's an educational program.
Right.
So we're giving you pieces of education. We're giving you wisdom. We're teaching kids and adults that this is a process. It takes time. It's not a quick fix.
No.
And Olivia's house doesn't heal you magically overnight.
No.
They give you these tools, like you say.
Right.
I always call it a quiver of arrows. We're putting all the arrows in your quiver, and you're going off to face the world.
Right.
And you will pull your arrows out when you need them.
Right.
And they'll be there for you to use. So that's really interesting and kind of awesome that you have now as a young adult recognized that.
Yeah.
So the first time you came through, I know you did a lot of writing. You wrote a beautiful poem about your mom, and then shared it with a wonderful audience that was helping Olivia's house at a special event. So writing and dancing and all of those tools, coping strategies were there in place for you.
Right.
How did Olivia's house kind of help you to recognize that giving back to others and letting people know about your pain was really what was going to help you heal?
Well, that's, I think, a huge part of what the program is, and what you guys set out to do is to say, here we're giving you these tools, and in return, you can share your tools, and you can share this message of healing and grieving and the process. And I mean, it's, it's as much for you as it is for the people that are, experiencing it. And going to alumni night, the first time I went, I think I got more out of it than I thought I was going to. And I remember telling my dad, like, well, yeah, I got choked up when I was talking about this and that. And he was like, I sort of figured that was going to happen. And I was like, okay, but, it's...
So the learning comes back around, kind of a full circle ability to kind of share your wisdom, even though you have to gain that knowledge in the program and then apply it. Tell me a little bit about the second time you came through, because it was for your stepsister who you didn't know very well yet.
Right.
How different was that from your mom?
It was a lot different. I mean, and grieving for her is a lot different because we, my dad and my stepmom had only been married a couple months, and then we lost my stepsister, and I never really formed a bond with her as a sister. So it was sort of hard to grieve, because how do you grieve when you didn't have this relationship, and you didn't have, with my mom, I had 14 years almost to draw on, and memories and things we used to do and all this stuff. And then, we were sisters really for only a couple months before she passed away. And so it's like, how do I'm grappling for things to, remember her by, and I didn't, I don't have that much. So it's a much different grieving process than...
There's a word for that. It's called disenfranchised, where, it's a different process in a way, because you don't have the support of the community the same way you did, I'm sure, when your mom died, because they look at that and they think, well, you didn't know her very well, and she wasn't really your sister, and they kind of take your grief from you in a way. But you do have the right to mourn that loss, and it is very real, and it needed to be worked through. So you were back here for a second program. Yeah. And I think if I were to ask you, what wisdom would you give to teenagers and to their parents about the fact that you didn't want to be here probably either time, but you did it? What wisdom would you share with them on that?
Well, teenagers, I would say, you don't know everything. You think you do, but you don't. And you should listen to your parents. And to parents, I would say, they won't hate you forever. They'll look back on it and realize that you did know something, and they'll be thankful that you brought them to Olivia's house. So
it's always, hindsight is wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. How old are you now, and what are you doing?
I'm 23 years old, and I graduated college about a year ago, and I'm teaching in North Carolina now.
So a success story for Olivia's house.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being with us and sharing so much of what's been going on in your world.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm here now. My question I have for you. One of the things about Olivia's house is that we always say you come in, feeling like a victim, and then you leave as a victor. You become that wisdom giver. And I think what's so special about the programs is during the program week, we have alumni come back. Folks like yourself who have graduated from the program to then give wisdom to the children. Where were you? Where am I at now?
Right.
What's the process you're looking like?
Right.
And I love that you have been one of those alumni for multiple times now.
A couple times, yeah.
And even so much so that when you were in college, you would drive all the way back, which was like an hour and a half.
You make it sound a lot better than it is, but
it's a lot to us that our alumni found, the importance in that to do it.
Right.
And I guess that would be like my first question for you is why make that? Why make that commute? Why is it so important?
Well, it took me, I was telling the group yesterday, it took me a long time before I said like, okay, this is something I want to do. This is something I'm ready to do. I wasn't ready to do it, after the first time I had gone through it or after the second time I had gone through it. It took me a long time, and it took me actually going through the grieving process, which I wasn't doing, when I was in high school, before I said like, okay, I've made my peace. I've used all the tools in that toolbox that they gave me, and I'm ready to say, look, it sucks for a while, and it's really bad, and it's really awful, and it never really gets completely unawful, but it gets better.
Yeah.
And it changes, and you move on, and you realize it's not going to be awful forever.
Right. And I love that one group you were in where you shared, when I was here, I didn't tell the whole story. I shared what they wanted me to say, and I was kind of what they expected. And it wasn't until you came back as an alumni that you were able to say the real deal of, this is really what I struggled with.
Yeah.
And you were that voice to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I so appreciate that, because we've heard that many times from alumni, that it's not until they come back that they're able to be real.
Yeah.
So where does that trigger? What does that change come to? You're like, now I'm okay. I want to share this part.
I think it's, time. We're couple months, it'll be 10 years since she passed, my mom. So I think it's, they say time heals. It's cliche, but it's true, and things change, and you just sort of, move on, and you realize that, at one point that was a defining factor of who I was, and I was very upfront about it. Like, people knew I was that girl. I was the girl whose mom died, and now, I was telling the girls yesterday, like, you become much more careful about who you share that information with, and, who you kind of show your vulnerability to. It becomes a much more select group. It's like, okay, you've shown that you're deserving of that, and so I'm going to share this with you.
Well, what we always kind of work with them on is this doesn't have to be your identity.
Right.
It's a part of who you are, but it doesn't
Right.
need to be everything you are.
Right.
So tell me, is it different from the first time you were an alumni to like where you came in this week with a different group? Like, does it change each time? Does it depend on the group dynamics? Like,
the first group, had I think a lot more questions, and they were, they kind of picked my brain and, asked the hard pressing questions. and this group yesterday was a little bit more quiet and, a little bit just, they wanted to talk, but they didn't have a lot of questions. And there was something, I think I could kind of tell that they were like a little newer in the grieving process.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to see the two different dynamics of like, a year and a half afterwards where you're picking the brains and you're, how did you deal with this and how did you do that? And whereas, the newer, you're just kind of like,
they're still
closed up a little bit. And so it was really interesting.
Well, that's all fascinating. And I'm so glad that you're here and thankful that you're always an alumni and willing to share your story. It's so meaningful. And like you said, not everyone is willing and able to do that.
Right.
It takes a special person. So we're grateful that you do that for us and for the families. So nonetheless, we're going to head back upstairs and meet up with Mom.
Well, we have had a wonderful time visiting with Jamie, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I think that it just bears saying that every time we have somebody on the show that can give a perspective from one of the kids that have come through our program and that can really kind of validate everything that we do here, it's really awesome. So thank you for making the trip in and making this a priority, and for being an alumni with us just last night. That was awesome. It just means the world to us that you can play that role. So again, another great show. Thanks so much for tuning in.
And thank you, as always, to our wonderful sponsor of Oh By The Way, AseraCare Hospice Foundation. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. As well as want to tell you, please tune in for our upcoming episodes. I know we got a really special one on tap with our friend Jeff Belomo at his new office he just moved into.
I have a personal stake in that one.
I know, and you know what? He is probably one of my, I always say, one of my favorite people. There are a bunch of people in this world I love, but Jeff Belomo is one of the best ones. So
he's the funniest.
He is. So I'm so excited. So hang in there and tune in for that episode coming up soon. And anything
have a great
else?
week.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.